In tonight's headlines, Hong Kong's population grows for the second straight year, with double the number of one-way permit holders arriving. A massive piece of scaffolding falls from a construction site in Kai Tak, crushing 2 workers to death. And China's top official on Hong Kong affairs, Xia Baolong, arrives this week as the push for Article 23 legislation gathers pace.
Hong Kong's population has increased for the second consecutive year, reaching 7.5 million last December. That figure was close to the 7.52 million recorded in 2019, before COVID brought the city to a standstill. The government said Hong Kongers who stayed abroad during the COVID outbreak returned last year, contributing to the population increase. Arrivals from the mainland and overseas also boosted the figure. Over 40,000 mainlanders settled in Hong Kong through the one-way permit scheme, reaching a 5-year high. The number was double that of 2022, when border control measures were still in place. There was also a slight increase in births. Over 33,000 babies were born last year, around 500 more than in 2022. Maisie Mock, Cable News.
2 workers were crushed to death this afternoon when a giant piece of scaffolding fell from a construction site in Kai Tak. Police were called to the Panel Harbour luxury development just before 5 p.m. after the object, measuring roughly 20 by 20 meters, came crashing down to the ground. 5 people were injured, including 3 who were trapped underneath the scaffolding. 2 women, aged 54 and 68, were unconscious when they were pulled out and were pronounced dead in hospital. It was the 3rd industrial accident at the residential project in 4 months.
The chief executive says the city will step up efforts to enact Article 23 national security legislation as soon as possible. Speaking before the weekly Executive Council meeting, John Lee said many positive and supportive opinions have been received so far during the month-long public consultation, which ends next Wednesday. The submissions will be passed on to the Legislative Council.
The general consensus is if we can do it one day earlier, we should do it one day earlier, because the threat continues. And the threat actually has been mounting. So we must gear up our efforts to ensure that we will do it ASAP.
Xia Baolong, the Beijing official supervising Hong Kong affairs, will arrive on Thursday for a 6-day visit to get a progress report on the progress of Article 23. The director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office will meet executive councillors, lawmakers and district council members, as well as representatives of the business and professional sectors. Xia's itinerary has yet to be confirmed, but sources say he will also tour the streets to chat with residents. Janice Yu, Cable News.
MTR workers were busy this morning installing automatic platform gates in Sha Tin Station. The work is set to be completed in the first half of this year, when barriers will also be in operation in Shenzhen, Tai Wai, and Tai Po market stations. All 16 stations on the East Rail line will have platform gates by next year, following what the railway operator describes as a challenging operation.
It's a station already in the service, and also it's a very old structure, so the geographical conditions for this station is different. Okay, with the lesson learning of the previous stations, it will improve our installation efficiency.
Work will begin this month to install safety gates in 4 stations: Fanling, Tai Wo, Fo Tan, and Kowloon Tong. Lowell, University, and Mong Kok East stations will be the last to have gates put in place because of the complexity of their platforms. Leung said installation in those 3 stations will only begin in the 4th quarter of this year, as workers will need more experience first. Gates were installed earlier in 4 other East Rail stations: Admiralty, Exhibition Center, Hong Kong, Racecourse, and Lok Ma Chau. Leung was asked about a recent incident in which passengers were unable to leave the train as the gate stayed shut as it was approaching Exhibition Center. He described it as a one-off accident, adding that staff keep check on the gates and carry out maintenance from time to time. Maisie Mock, Cable News.
There was a scare in Prince Edward this morning when a 3-year-old girl was found dangling from a clothes rack on the 4th floor of her building. Pedestrians on Wong Chuk Street were alarmed to see the infant stuck between parallel bars. They alerted police before dashing up to the girl's flat and pulled her to safety. The child was unhurt in the incident. Her 44-year-old mother, who went shopping for groceries, was arrested for child neglect. Her husband had gone to work.
Palestinians have declared before the World Court that they will remain in their ancestral land and fight for their rights despite the hardships of Israeli occupation. Judges in The Hague were told that for decades, Israel gave Palestinians 3 options: displacement, subjugation, or death. As the court was urged to declare the occupation illegal, more Palestinians were rushed to hospital after being wounded in Israel's ongoing bombardment of Gaza.
The existence of this illegal colonial occupation and apartheid regime is the source of all its ills our people are suffering. Any formula that does not deal with that root cause is planting the seeds for more tragedy and aiding Israel in keeping the Palestinian people captive to its colonial agenda and illegal actions. The deliberations today are long overdue. For the Palestinian people, no less than their survival and future are at stake as they endure Israel's genocidal war on Gaza.
Hospital services in South Korea have been disrupted after hundreds of junior doctors began striking in protest against a government decision to increase enrollment in medical schools. The walkout came after 6,500 trainee doctors resigned.
의료 현장의 주역인 전공의와
President Yoon Suk-yeol urged the strikers not to hold people's lives and health hostage.
전공의 집단 행동으로
Second Vice Health Minister Park Min-soo said none of the resignations have been accepted. He added that the government wants to increase the number of physicians because South Korea has the second lowest doctor-to-patient ratio among developed nations. The strikers argued that money spent to train more doctors would divert resources from other needs. But skeptics say physicians are worried that more competition means lower salaries.
China's central bank has slashed one of its key lending rates as policymakers face growing pressure to revive the stagnant property market. The People's Bank of China announced that the benchmark 5-year loan prime rate, or LPR, has been lowered by 25 basis points to 3.95%. The reduction is the biggest in 8 downward adjustments since 2019 and the first since last June. The 5-year LPR is reviewed every month and is the reference rate for mortgages. Analysts believe the larger than expected cut reflected the urgency of financial planners to shore up the housing market. The 1-year LPR, the de facto benchmark rate for individual and corporate loans, remains unchanged at 3.45%. The central bank cut its reserve ratio requirements for banks by 50 basis points earlier this month, injecting 1 trillion yuan of long-term capital into the market.